family. Welcome back to Dark Woke, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. But just before we jump, Dark Woke is a self-funded, self-produced show. We're on Patreon/Dark Woke. I am so grateful for all the support and for you just taking the time to listen. Okay, let's hit it. I've been sitting here gathering the news for you, and just when I thought that America could not possibly become more ghetto, they allowed 49 Afrikaners into the country. This is 49 white South Africans, right, who are seeking refugee status because they are experiencing racial persecution in South Africa. Why don't I let that raggedy doll leave it tell you all about it?
Has shown support for South African refugees that are coming to the United States next week. Can you talk about what these refugees are fleeing and why this is a priority for the administration?
Well, the president has actually signed an executive order on that matter. My office can get it back to you, Michael. But this group in South Africa has faced racial persecution.
Wait. White people in South Africa, white South Africans are experiencing racial discrimination in South Africa. Okay, cool. Totally cool.
In fact, the government there has vowed to take away their farmland that they own. And so the president has talked significantly about this. As for further details on refugee claims and asylum claims, I would defer you to the State Department.
Okay, so now we can just take a moment, right? Just take a moment. I want to just get into that for a second. So we are deporting people with green cards in America. We're deporting innocent people living their life. We're eliminating due process, right? We're deporting cancer researchers, anti-aging researchers. We're deporting graduate students and experts. Hell, we've even detained and deported a Canadian actress. We're doing all of this, right? We're eliminating due process, habeas corpus, everything. But we're allowing 49 white South Africans who are experiencing persecution over farmland. Let me just be clear. This is South Africa we're talking about. So let me hit you back for a second. In 1913, South Africa passed the Natives Land Act, which forbade Black people from owning or leasing land in white areas. That act designated just 7% of farmland for Black people, right? So 93% went to white people in South Africa. That was back in 1913. The government also forcibly removed Black people from the land they owned if that area was designated for white settlers. This was during apartheid times. So South Africa is literally the legacy of that. So today, white people own 72% of the private farmland in South Africa, despite being only 7% of the population. So I want to be really clear. The 49 South African folks that are coming here as refugees, these are the fucking loserest of the losers. This is what I will never understand about aggrieved poor white people today. Why aren't you mad that legacies of your ancestors were so fucking stupid they couldn't literally capitalize on a system rigged for them explicitly? These are not peak whites. These are whites with ringworm. These are scurvy whites. You are bringing in 49 scurvy whites. So how did you fumble the bag on racial apartheid? That's what I want to know. 72% of private farmland in South Africa is owned by white people, despite being only 7% of the population. You are the weakest of the weak. Like, what is this? Bringing over golem ass whites. I can't. Okay. Sorry. So, is there any justification for this claim? No. Okay. The South African government said it was completely false that Afrikaners were being persecuted. There's a great article, okay? There's a great article on the BBC that the claims of white genocide are not real. That's a literal quote. But you know, Elon Musk and his little advisor, right? Where did this come from? Of course, Elon Musk has made a fuck ton of money from inheriting the Emerald Mine that his father owned. He's a Afrikaner. Elon Musk inherited that mine, leveraged some of that money, of course, to get into his little business endeavors. But yeah, all of this has to do with, this ruling came down, right, where they decided in February 2025 that they dismissed claims of white genocide in the country. They called it clearly imagined, that's a direct quote, and not real, undermining comments made by the U.S. President, Donald Trump, and Elon Musk. This is me citing the article that we're speaking of. So this ruling came as the court blocked a wealthy benefactor's donation to white supremacist group Bor Religion. Don't make me say that word. It's a terrible word because it's a stupid thing. Yeah. It's all about wanting to further a message of racial hatred and separation. There are people who fantasize about living in a white ethno-state completely, right? Even in South Africa, shocking, considering that apartheid is actually what's informing and helping to inform and shape so much of the racial divide, of ethno-state languages that we're seeing, and also just blueprints in general, right? What we see in Israel's treatment of its Palestinian people, like the Palestinian people, is a much more sophisticated system of apartheid than we've seen in South Africa even. All of these systems inform each other, right? Help to shape what we saw in the Jim Crow South. So, yeah. I don't really understand these fantasies of persecution, right? Like, you are literally getting your ass handed to you by a bunch of fucking billionaires. You want to talk about a gorilla? 100 men versus a gorilla. What about like fucking 8 billion people versus like 10,000 billionaires? How about that? How about we give that a go? I'd be interested in seeing that. By the way, I did read that a man was murdered by a kangaroo in Newsweek. I don't know how it happened. He got beaten to death by a kangaroo. I did laugh. I laughed the first time I read it. I did not want to. Okay? I didn't want to laugh. But kangaroos, they really got short arms. So he had to have been kicked to death by a kangaroo. We got to move on because there's no way that I can make sense of this. There's so many things. I do want to just point out really quickly, and I'll have more to say tomorrow on this, I'm sure, for Tuesday's episode. But just as I sat down to record this, New York Times dropped an article that the United States and China have reached a temporary agreement to reduce the punishing tariffs. I want to be clear, this is the tariffs that the American consumer is going to be covering, right? When you hear tariff, that is a tax. Somebody is covering that tax. It is the regular American populace. It's working class people, it's middle class people, it's poor people. We are who are covering that tariff. So the United States put a tariff on Chinese imports at 145%, right? So of course, China retaliated and put a 125% tariff on any American good. So they're now going to reduce that. America is going to reduce its tariff from 145% to 30%. China is going to reduce its tariff on American goods from 125% to 10%. They are going to do this while they negotiate a deal over the next 90 days. I hope, right, we are definitely going to feel a bit of a crunch, but my hope is that it is a short window of time. Naturally, as we've built up a case for it, this is all just one major power grab while they use smoke and mirrors to get the American people to engage in some nonsense culture war. Speaking of which, speaking of the culture, couldn't help but notice that Megyn Kelly had something to say, and so did some of the loser troll rights on Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney, the little actor trans girl who did a Bud Light commercial where everybody lost their shit. Honestly, no shade to Dylan Mulvaney, but she's just regular. Like, she's just a nice girl. And they tried to turn her into some kind of monster because she's trans. So here she is being all cute with her little Versace, right? Her little Versace ting. She's a little influencer, right? So what does Megyn Kelly say? She taps Versace in a tweet and says, Versace, you are our new Bud Light, right? And I want to be clear. First of all, leave Dylan Mulvaney alone, right? Second of all, Megyn Kelly, you raggedy bitch, okay? First of all, Megan with a Y, okay? You, the little fucking vampire on Fox News, Megan with a Y, how dare you open your reptilian mouth about Mulvaney and Versace, okay? I've seen you try to dress, bitch. You care. You care. And let me tell you right now, the only assignment that you have ever owned was a Nazi one. You chirpy velociraptor. Close your mouth. And you know what? I would love for MAGA to really hit up and try to open their mouths about fashion. I would love for you to disturb the very rich fashion gays who run the entire industry, my people. I'd love for you to start. Why don't we get after Donald Trump, okay? Donald Trump, you want to talk fashion, bitch? You want to go after the fashion world? Donald Trump, you brioche bun in Brioni. You want to open your mouth? We know what you're hiding, babe. There's no need. We know you got a pear shape under that oversized Martin Greenfield. We know, babe. We know. We call your body fruit of the loom. Okay? Both because you're a little fruity and also the pear shape. Remember that. We can see your Rubenesque form from afar. I don't know why you're so afraid to show it. Okay, I don't. Just keep wearing these oversized suits. The shoulder pads are tired, babe. They can't keep it up. They can't. They cannot hide the diva that you are. I would love for you all to come after us on our fashion. Would love it. Would absolutely love it. Invite it. Leave the girl alone. Okay. Okay, we are moving through our quick hits today. I do want to say, though, that Trump accepted a $400 million plane from Qatar. Like, can we just take a minute to think about that? There is no contradiction too far from Donald Trump, not even from Qatar, right? First of all, so this is the thing. This is a gift that's supposed to be available for use by the president, right? As the new Air Force One until shortly before he leaves office, right? So they're calling this a palace in the sky. That's how it's been referenced by everybody, including this guy. He's been salivating at the mouth for this. This is a luxury jet, right? From Qatar's royal family, okay? I just want to be clear that these are folks that have ties in, and I'm against all kinds of imperialist extremism. I really am. So, turns out I got some problems with that, right? Let's get into the fact that there's ties that Qatar has to Hezbollah, right? To the Houthis, to just about everybody you can imagine over yonder that America is supposedly against. Not to mention quite a long list of human rights violations, not to suggest that America's hands are clean, but they tend to be on the opposite sides. And this is not some sort of sign that things are getting better. Absolutely not. I will say that Trump does seem to be in open communication with Hamas. I'm not mad about that if it means recognition of a Palestinian state. Now, I'm only inclined to hold that line so long as that recognition actually turns into borders, right? It actually turns into protected borders. But Donald Trump will drop a whole slew of things and just lie in order to get whatever reaction he wants. He might just want Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, to feel a little bit on the back foot using Palestinian people as pawns. I do not trust a single thing this man has said. He is literally trying to sell the West Bank and Gaza under the Palestinian people. I cannot, right? This is a guy that has largely cleared the runway for Bibi to bomb people into oblivion, human beings, right? For a white ethno-state. I want to be really clear about this. Jewish extremism and Christian fundamental extremism working hand in hand, which is why having a pope that is openly against the bombing of Gazans, the starvation campaign, it's why it's so unbelievably significant. And don't let any of these hoes tell you different. I think it's Leo the 14th now. He's not Francis anymore. What's XIV? That's, what is that Roman numeral? It is, right? Right? Let's see if I'm right. 14, that's right. Yeah, Leo the 14th. We're not going to know what he says, right? But I want you to get the man's energy. We're not going to know exactly what he says, but you could hear Gaza in it. You could hear it, right? So I just want to say what he does say when you're listening is, and he said this on Sunday, what is happening in the Gaza Strip pains me deeply. May there be an immediate ceasefire. May humanitarian aid be brought to the exhausted civilian population, and may all hostages be released. He could go, in my opinion, he could go a little edgier, but that's very different than what we're getting.
Dolora profondamente quanto accade nella striscia di Gaza. Cessi immediatamente il fuoco.
You hear the people clapping.
Si presti soccorso umanitario alla stremata popolazione civile e siano liberati tutti gli ostaggi.
Okay. Yes. I do want to, is it terrible that every time I hear that, I'm just like, bobbity boopy, boopity papa. Was that sacrilegious? That might have been sacrilegious. Also, Italians, do not be mad at me. I would love to recruit you on our side and to our side in the race war, as you know, right? There's a lot that we have in common here. There's a lot with the hands, with the overt expressions of love, with the commitment to Jesus and Catholicism. I think we've got something together, my Italians. Poveri boppi. Gabagool. All right. They never liked you over there. The WASPs never appreciated Italian culture. Okay. I be knowing. All right. No. Okay. Back to serious. Be serious, Future. You got this. You could be serious. You could be a serious boy. Okay. So this jet, there's a question. Is this even legal? I thought the president wasn't allowed to take gifts. I would like to reframe this. This is not a gift from Qatar. This is a bribe. So now let's reframe it. Is the president allowed to accept bribes? No. Is the president allowed to accept $400 million jet gifts? Also no. Also no, right? The constitutions, what is with these words? Emoluments. E-M-O-L-U-M-E-N-T. How do you say this? Emolum. Okay, that clause prohibits any person holding office from accepting, quote, any present emolument, office, or title of any kind, whatever, from any king, prince, or foreign state without congressional consent. They definitely didn't get that. Also, do I need to mention that they committed atrocities? Even Laura Loomer, right? Even Laura Loomer, the fruit bat to Donald's Fruit of the Loom, right? The lousy, loose mega influencer, her. She was upset, right? She's out here yapping about this, and she loves that man. As she said in her tweet, I would take a bullet for him, but this is unacceptable. None of them ever changed their minds. None of them ever changed their minds. It amazes me that while 60% of America lives paycheck to paycheck, they have no problem, right? All of these guys, his supporters, have no problem with the fact that he can accept a $400 million jet. Why don't you sell it, bud? Why don't you sell it? Give it to the American people. If you say you're this kind of guy, be that kind of guy. But, they're not really into it that much. There's something I want to play for you, right? About the Library of Congress, right? The Librarian of Congress was fired. This is an interesting thing. Why don't I play it for you? Because there's always more than meets the eye with these people. Let me just play this for you. This is Leave It at a press conference, once again doing her, explanations, defenses, justifications that she does for Donald Trump and the administration day in and day out.
The president.
Question, the president fired the Librarian of Congress. Why did he choose to do that?
We felt she did not fit the needs of the American people. There were quite concerning things that she had done at the Library of Congress in the pursuit of DEI and putting inappropriate books in the library for children, and we don't believe that she was serving the interests of the American taxpayer well, so she has been removed from her position, and the president is well within his rights to do that.
You guys, do you remember how she said that they're putting inappropriate books for children, right? First of all, this is a black woman. And so they are firing her in part because she is black, as partly why they're using the whole DEI agenda. Anybody who is black, who does not kowtow and hold the Trump line, right, is getting booted, point blank, period. Right? Now, it's true of everybody, but they're going to get rid of any black people with real relish. But here's the problem when you have an administration that is firing a person, the Librarian of Congress, when they don't know how to fucking read, okay? They don't know how to read these people. It is not a literal librarian, okay? It's not, oh my God. The Library of Congress gets a copy of every book published in the United States, print or digital. It is part of how copyright is established. Nobody's taking out books from there. It is a research library, not one where kids go to check out books, you simple bitches. So the Trump administration fired the top U.S. copyright official days after removing the Librarian of Congress who appointed her. Here's the big picture, okay? Politico first reported that that Register of Copyrights, Shira Perlmutter's removal. They announced it on Saturday. It came soon after her office issued a report on artificial intelligence that raised concerns about using copyrighted works to train AI. This is the real reason why they turfed her. Okay? This is an industry that Elon Musk very much wants involvement in his startup XAI. They want to get all copyrighted and IP protected works so they could train their AI. It is stealing from artists, from writers, from authors, from thinkers, from scholars, from just regular ass people who write this. This is your work, people. All of it. Your brain trust, everything that you've thought, everything that you've written, even the fucking idiots. That's what he wants access to. Last month, Musk put out on Twitter, now called X because he's a fucking loser, delete all IP law. Delete all intellectual property law, right? This is not a coincidence that Trump acts less than a day after Perlmutter, quote, refused to rubber stamp Elon Musk's efforts to mine troves of copyrighted works to train AI models. We are all getting fucked over by AI, by this administration. It's honestly so transparent. It's disgusting, which is why, if you'll allow me, right, this temporary indulgence, why loser fucking hacks like Bill Maher need to be seen for exactly what he is. Whatever cool this guy was, whatever position he stood for is long fucking gone. Just like indulge me, because you know I'd be going somewhere with this, right? Listen to this guy.
Democrats should reclaim the flag and then get it clean because someone's been humping it.
It's a picture of Donald Trump holding the flag, whatever. I mean, is this what you turn into when you've had a talk show for so long? Just zingers that don't zing? I do want to point out, right before we go on, I do want to point out that sitting beside him is Rep. Mike Lawler. Okay? Remember the social worker that got dragged out? Remember the guy who had an unbelievable list of things you're not allowed to do? Right up to breathing, or you will be removed from his town halls because he's terrified of his constituents because they're fucking pissed off at all, I don't know, the illegal and greedy activity that is happening by this rapacious government. Okay, cool. That's who's sitting beside Bill Maher right now.
But seriously, this is a serious problem for Democrats. Less than 1 in 4 Democrats under 30 say they're proud to be an American. 54% say they're embarrassed by it. Embarrassed? Like America's your mom picking you up at school?
Embarrassing. That is so fucking embarrassing. First of all, the joke is it's a quote pulled from the Daily Caller. A fucking hack mega rag. That's all it is. It's a fucking blog sphere for fucking incels and mega losers. That's who you're citing it for. Only 24% of young Democrats expressing pride in being American. 54% they said that they are embarrassed. Shouldn't you fucking be? Shouldn't you be? You're saying that you're talking about how you're angry at them, that they sound like they're complaining about their mom. You're sitting beside a congressman, that is Mike Lawler, who is sponsoring the bill that is meant to punish Americans for boycotting Israel with fines of $1 million and prison terms of up to 20 years. You're saying they shouldn't be embarrassed by that, right? Wow. Wow, big man, big man, little brain.
You're embarrassed to be an American? Well, guess what? The feeling's mutual because you have no perspective.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. We don't need to listen to more of him. He goes on to bitch and moan. But honestly, I mean, do you know how ridiculous you sound right now? This is the guy that used to say, you know, Trump is a bridge too far. Now you're having dinner with him and suddenly, and I'm the first. You know I can't stand an establishment, damn y'all. You know it. But this is getting out of control. Like, this is literally getting out of control. There's a lot. There's a lot to be said here. But I want to round us out. This is going to be a little bit tighter. I'm going to do, this episode's a little bit tighter. There's going to be a couple others that are a little bit tighter this week. It's time, you know, we're making some shifts. We're doing some things. It's time to start bringing people back on, right? So I got to free up a little bit. Got to free up a little bit of time. Okay? The other thing is, you know that I be yapping, so don't worry. It's not going to get that deep. But there's something that has been really grinding my gears. Okay? And that is that you might wake up and you might look at the news and it's going to tell you that Trump is promising to lower the cost of drugs and that there's going to be a new, you know, a whole new drug program that is going to cut costs for Americans. Trump says that he's going to sign this executive order, right? He's made a big stink about it. I just want to read this like little statement that he's actually, you know what? I don't need to read his truth out fucking statement. I'm fine. I'm going to tell you the part that matters. Okay. He's saying that he's going to cut your drug costs by 30 to 80%, right? That sounds really good. And if I read some of the news coverage on it, right? Like let's say from USA Today, you might, and you only read maybe half of it, you might think this is great. So this says, Trump's going to sign this executive order that institutes a most favored nation policy. And that's what we're going to talk about, the most favored nation policy for drug pricing. That is reviving a plan that he tried to do in his first term that will reduce prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices. That's a quote, right? Almost immediately by 30 to 80%. He said he's going to sign this order on May 12th, which, yep, it's today, Monday, right? And it's expected to direct the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to adopt the policy, which would set prescription drug prices to match those of comparable countries. This is the thing that we need to understand. Now, you might think, okay, well, if he tried to run it during his first term and it didn't work, right? What was going on with that, right? Full details of the order, which obviously drew immediate resistance from the pharmaceutical industry. And there's reasons for that. We obviously know that there's going to be certain aspects of the pharmaceutical industry, which is very greedy and rapacious itself, right? So some of them are going to be pissed off. That's going to draw some ire, right? That's insurance programs, and drugs would also fall under this initiative. So Trump pushed that most favored nation policy, which would have applied to Medicare payments, which was later rescinded by the Biden administration. Okay. So I do want to be clear about something. Drug prices in the United States are nearly 3 times higher than 33 comparison countries. Now, that's according to a 2024 report from the Health and Human Services Department. Currently, about 67 million Americans are enrolled in Medicare. So, wouldn't that be a good thing, right? If we're price matching essentially with the international world, and we in America are being upcharged in every possible way, shouldn't that suggest it be a good thing? No, because it's bullshit. Okay? Look, U.S. prices average around 2.8 times higher than other OECD countries. Okay? That is like an intergovernmental organization with 38 member countries. It was established in I don't know, 1961 or something. Okay. It is the Organization for Economic Cooperation. And I can't remember what the D stands for. I was on a roll there. Okay, wait. I got to figure out what the D stands for. I had it in my head. Development. Thank you. Okay. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay. So, yes, U.S. prices average almost 3 times higher than that. But this is true of only a few dozen, right? So only a few dozen infused specialty drugs account for most of that gap. Okay. So I want to be clear. There's only a couple of drugs that account for most of that gap. All the other big savings vanish once you move the outside of that slice. This is so upsetting. There's a great article in ProPublica. There's a couple of articles actually where they talk about the price of like one cancer fighting drug, for example, right? That would be an example of one of the drugs that's like, it costs like about $1,000 per pill. You're going to get that way less, but that accounts, it's one of those. So an executive order, right? That's going to cover across the board. So it's going to cut you out of that slice, right? And now you got to ask yourself, does it balance out after that? Or are Americans still ultimately paying more? So an executive order can steer Medicare or Medicaid payments, but it cannot force manufacturers to cut the list price they charge private insurers, cash pay patients, pharmacies, or wholesalers without an act of Congress. Trying anyway, right, would be struck down under the Administrative Procedure Act and the Commerce Clause. That is exactly what killed Trump's narrower 2020 MFN model in federal court. So that's what he tried previously and failed to do. Don't take it from me. This is from doing actual research. It's ProPublica. It's Ed Krasenstein. It's understanding the OECD and how it operates. Okay. So what they're doing is like, okay, we're going to let international markets determine the cost of drugs. Again, that sounds like a good thing. But foreign prices are negotiated in secret rebates, right? Not the public list numbers the U.S. could reference. So all they would have to do, firms would just have to raise their official list prices abroad and refund foreign health systems through confidential discounts, okay? Additionally, drug makers will more than likely sue under something like the takings clause, right? Because you got government imposed below cost sales, due process and First Amendment theories, and insurers who would claim impairment of existing contracts. Okay. And then you've got, oh my God, the problem with U.S. companies losing money for research and development. That's a huge part of it. So U.S. sales still supply 60% of global drug profits, and across the board, 30 to 80% cut would wipe out tens of billions in annual R&D funding, according to industry and independent economic models. So basically, this is the chain reaction that's going to happen. Let me tell you, this is Ed Krasenstein who's saying this, okay? A man about town. This is what he said. 1, manufacturers are going to raise foreign list prices, right? That's the U.S. reference price barely falls. Barely falls. So Americans aren't saving money. 2, foreign payers will demand deeper rebates, which will mean that firms offset by higher U.S. launch prices for new drugs. Okay? Firms will offset that by higher U.S. launch prices for new drugs. So for newer drugs, innovative drugs, you're going to be paying even more. 3, investment analysts mark down future cash flows. That means that biotech funding dries up, early stage startups sell or fold. 4, U.S. jobs. And by the way, if you are somebody or know somebody who you love who has fought cancer, survived cancer, even died in cancer, you know that new and innovative drugs are sometimes the thing that either saves a life or gives people more time, right? Anyway. Number 4, U.S. jobs and tax base shrink, while patients still face high deductibles because list prices inside commercial insurance stay high. So, is an executive order that Donald Trump signs going to get this all done and managed? No. That's why he's not passing any laws with Congress. It's an executive order, right? Trump tried to initiate most favored nations, that idea in 2020 for Medicare. It was shot down in the courts. There's no reason for him to think it's not going to be shot down again. So this is, again, another fucking distraction, right? It's another distraction for the fact that he's running off to the Middle East in a $400 million fucking jet while he goes to sit down with fucking Saudi Arabian princes and sheiks and oil tycoon billionaires. That's it. That's it. And it's another reason for him to attack judges in the courts. That is all that this is about. But the problem is that we are using, once again, the fact that people are getting fucking just absolutely just robbed by big pharma and billionaires and just, medical debt. You're one illness away from being in debt for the rest of your life, right? They're capitalizing, exploiting on people's pain to justify this. And it's a ruse. There's no legs in it, okay? There isn't. They know that Americans pay more in general for prescription drugs than other wealthier countries. And so they're saddling. Patients have been saddled with debilitating debt, right? In situations where they have to choose between groceries or filling prescriptions. That's where we're at. And they're using that. They're not changing it. They're using it. In the U.S., right? And this is true. Their change needs to happen. In the U.S., drug companies determine what to charge for their products with few restraints. That's why having somebody like Lena Khan in an FTC chair was essential, right? There's few restraints. Insurance companies can refuse to cover a drug to try to negotiate a lower price. But for some diseases like cancer, that poses a risk of public backlash, and that's what keeps them kind of in check. Because we know cancer is a very politically charged disease. But, right? What does an expert on drug pricing have to say about this? So cancer, I think, is one of the things that we still feels bipartisan, okay? So Dr. Hagop Kantarjian, this is a leukemia specialist, right, at MD Anderson Cancer Center, who also studies drug pricing, said that pharmaceutical companies often overstate the cost of developing drugs and that many drug discoveries originate in hospital and academic labs funded through government grants. So a reminder that Donald Trump is gutting these things. But anyway, funding from the U.S. National Institute of Health contributed to all but 2 of the 356 drugs approved by the FDA from 2010 to 2019. That's according to, Bentley University study, okay? So companies also don't spend all of their profits on innovation. The 14 largest drug companies in the world spent more on stock buybacks and dividend payments to investors than on research and development. Okay, that is according to a 2021 analysis by the U.S. House Oversight Committee. Remember the thing that they didn't want AOC on? Okay. Anyway. The solution that's being put in front of us is tie American prices to what drug makers charge in other wealthy countries, right? So we've seen that. That would work, but only to a point, because that's not actually what is being enforced. It would only cover a very small amount of those drugs, right? So Trump says he's advocated for this thing, right? He says during his first term that he wants this executive order. He wants the Medicare program to employ the most favored nation approach in paying for drugs. The administration later developed a rule. This is a key point. Directing Medicare to select the lowest prices from a basket of similar countries and make that the maximum amount the agency would pay for 50 drugs administered by doctors. A court blocked the rule from being implemented in the last days of the first administration, okay, for the reasons that I named. Now, according to reports this week, the administration is pushing to tie Medicaid and Medicare prices to lower prices charged in other countries. But here's the thing. You don't want to leave decisions on medications to the government rather than doctors and patients. That's where it really needs to be going. Government price setting in any form is not great. It's not a catch-all good for American patients. We need to fix the flaws in the U.S. system. And that includes money that flows from intermediaries such as pharmacy benefit managers. The international reference pricing can be gamed. It's a system that can be rigged very easily that allows foreign governments to essentially set the value of medicine sold in the United States. Think about the ire that Donald Trump has set around the globe right now with these fucking tariffs. This is the absolute worst administration to implement something like this. But think about all the details that we've just gone over, several of which I still need to understand better, right? I've articulated the most reduced way of understanding it, but I still want more information on this. Do you think that the average person is doing this type of research? No, and they shouldn't be expected to. We're trading in the devil we know for the devil that we don't. Under a devil. Under the absolute worst fucking devil. We are being sold out again, right? Think about how. And I want to be very clear, very, very clear, that what is happening is not acceptable, right? The status quo as it stands, right? We're big pharma and a Congress that has stock portfolios to think of, right? These are who are setting the current costs. But shelling that out to international fucking sharks, potentially? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Doctors and patients. That's it. That's who gets to decide. Doctors and patients. This game can be rigged. And that's what you always have to remember this administration. There's always, just like the same thing with going after the Library of Congress when they have no idea what the fuck it is. And there's a whole AI play that is trying to get rid of copyright protections so they can infringe on everybody's protected materials so that they could train AI so that they can make more money, right? Selling this out to the international trade, that's going to have some massive cost benefit for them. And we need to know that now, which is why I'm really annoyed by how network television and mainstream media is reporting on this, because it's fake news and it's a fucking lie. They must be more serious and more cautious and more protective when it comes to reporting on Trump's so-called deals. And I'm using heavy air quotes, okay? This is what he does. He announces some sort of fucking deal. It's all part of a very familiar, very deceptive pattern where he says that there's some sort of major breakthrough. I'm looking at the tariffs with the same kind of scrutiny, right? Where it's actually revealed that in fact, nothing has changed. Nobody's won out. In fact, we end up having more. They said the same thing about the fucking tariffs. Now they're saying this thing that's going to change, where they're going to break down cost drugs 30 to 80%. Those are huge numbers. Why don't you tell us which drugs in particular? How about that? Why don't we start with specifics? Why don't we talk with how you're actually going to implement it, right? But in the meantime, Donald Trump always gets the headline that he wants. The press always amplifies the illusion, and the markets always react based on fiction and not fucking fact. Well, it turns out that I had a little more to say than I thought about the matter. But we are all being manipulated by a bunch of fucking bullshit. And this administration they barely have to do anything because American media will just report the headlines and not think about the facts. The majority of people are going to repeat that talking point. He's going to cut costs from 30 to 80%. Right? So why are you reporting it exactly as he says it instead of what we know to be true? Okay. All right. That's my little yap for the night. I appreciate you sticking it through with me because there were some hard words there. Okay. You know what? If ever this show strikes it, I want somebody whose only job is to tell me how to pronounce words. Okay? We ever strike gold with this show. I want somebody whose sole commitment to dark woke is to read to me the words I don't know how to say out loud, but make total sense in my head. All right. It's going to be a big week. It's going to be a good week. It's going to be an important week. We have a lot of work to do together. We have a lot of work in front of us. We have a lot of nonsense to cut through, but we are a hot knife to their butter, right? Butter that brioche bun of his. Take him to task. No. Okay. So, see, this is where we start to go. This is where we start to go. This is where I start thinking. Okay? Because these are the dumbest people on the fucking planet. Truly, the most greedy, contemptuous types. And we don't got to deal with it like this anymore. They don't know the difference between an Atlantic Ocean and a Pacific Ocean. They don't know anything. I had to sit there and listen to that idiot, Harriet Hagman. I mean, when you don't even have to come up with a name, like Couchfucker, because it's right there. Harriet Hagman, right? She's a fucking MAGA Republican. Sitting there yapping. Okay? Yapping. About this, that, and the other when she don't even know the difference between the oceans. Okay. I was going to play the clip and I'm like, no, we've heard enough. We've heard enough from the nonsense. Okay. We got a lot of work in front of us, as I mentioned, but here's the thing. I read something today that I really liked. Okay. Whatever you're doing, whatever idea you have, whatever thing that you're writing, whatever trouble you're shooting, right now, whatever relationship that that you want or that is breaking down or whatever, I want to say this to you. Move like everything is going to work out. Move like everything is going to work out because it is. Because it is. What I've learned, it doesn't always work out the way that we want it to. But it always works out the way that it needs to. Okay? Ultimately, we get to decide how we show up, how we care, how we love, how we act in hard times and in easy times. This is a hard time, right? This is a hard time to be in this country. It's a hard time to be alive. I imagine it always is some sort of hard time to be alive because honestly, you read a little bit about history and you're like, yeah, no, niggas never had it easy. Only the rich ever, right? And even then, I'm sure they have some personal issues or whatever, right? You could pay for therapy, but they didn't always have that shit. They'd rather just watch prisoners get eaten by lions. Sorry, focus. Move like everything is going to work out because it is. It always works out the way that it needs to. It's not always exactly the way that we want, but if we show up and we do our work and make sure that our side of the street is clean, right? We come out the versions of ourselves we have to be. Always better. Always. And in some cases, better able to throw bows and punches when we need to. All right. Here's our Monday. We had to burst the bubble of lower prices on medications because it's a fucking lie. And he just wants the headlines, and then we're not going to give him that. So, with that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to Dark Woke. It means the world to me. This show really is a labor of love. We got new episodes dropping all the time. We're available everywhere podcasts are. Don't forget, if you love this show, please feel free to support as best you can. We're at patreon.com/darkwoke. Just want to say, don't forget, if you got anything to say to me, any questions, go ahead and drop them at darkwokejfk@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. Shout out to you, the listeners that make everything